All right, so my name is James Senecal. I'm Director of Solution Architecture in North America, and I'm going to give you a quick little tidbit on risk-based testing, okay? When we look at risk-based testing, I go around, I meet with customers all over the United States, and comically, I ask questions, are you guys doing risk-based testing today? And I always get the proverbial, yeah, we are. Oh, okay, really, what's your risk coverage? Risk coverage? What? Wait, give me a percentage. Give me an idea. What are you guys looking at from a overall risk? And they say 95%. They make up something, right? Because a lot of times they don't know. Well, from my perspective, risk-based testing, it's kind of like a good night's sleep. Everybody really wants one, but nobody's sure how to make it happen. And so risk-based testing is kind of the same thing. Everybody wants to do risk-based testing, but they're not really necessarily sure what that means or how to achieve it. And that's kind of scary. So today, I'm going to give you death by PowerPoint. Okay, no, I'm not. I'm going to give you like 8 slides. We're going to be done in a couple of minutes, which is good. But we're going to talk, what is risk-based testing? Okay? Well, we have got to start at the beginning. What is risk? Okay? And if we go out for a great definition with regards to risk-based testing, it's the probability of occurrence, okay, of undesirable outcome. But that is also related to a business impact. So if we're thinking about this, right, something bad happens, it impacts the business. And this is with regards to our testing. Okay, so now that we understand risk, let's take it one step further. Risk-based testing is using risk to prioritize and emphasize our testing via the requirements. We look at our requirements and we say, oh, well, this is important stuff, and this is what we should be testing because it's what impacts the business the most, right? Well, when we start looking at risk-based testing, there's always that one piece that gets lost: time. The reason we do risk-based testing is because we don't have enough time to test every single segment of functionality within our application. So we have to be prudent in what we test and how, which means risk-based testing, now I'm looking at what is the biggest business impact, and then on top of that, what's going to cause the biggest problems. So we need to be thinking through the whole process to make sure that we can apply risk to our requirements to make sure we test at the right level. The problem is that today, everybody uses test cases. How many test cases do you have? Oh, I'm testing my order process. Okay, how many test cases do you have? Give me a number. 550, very nice number. Thank you very much, appreciate that. You, sir, win a prize. You have no idea how many test cases you actually need, because you're not looking at the overall risk. You're just saying, well, I've got 550 test cases. Do they all do the same thing? Well, I have no idea. How do you know? Exactly, you don't know. And that becomes the challenge, right? So we start looking at this. We've got 539 here. You were off by just a little bit. It's okay. You can still have some jelly beans, right? So you're looking at this from a testing perspective, and people say, well, I don't know if this is the right number of test cases. I don't know what the risk is associated with regards to releasing my application. Do we have enough test cases to cover the application to go live? Well, that's why test cases using a numeric is not the best method. We really want to do the right things, and we want to do them right. And that's using risk associated with our tests. So how do we do that? I'm not allowed to walk around, otherwise I'd be back and forth. I have to stay by the microphone. So it's really important that we actually prioritize our defects based on business impact. What does that mean? In Tosca, we're going to use 2 concepts: frequency class and damage class. Frequency: how often does this segment of the application get used? And damage: if it breaks, what's the business impact? And we're going to use values, numeric values, right, to quantitate those different classes. So as you see here, I use my laser pointer, which it doesn't work on a flat screen TV. That's always lovely. If we look at here, we've got a business impact for the standard sales order, frequency of 5, and a damage class of 5. If I can't place an order, well, everybody uses placing an order, and if it doesn't work, well, that's a pretty big impact, okay? And that becomes an extrapolated as we go further into the requirements to see, okay, the different types of orders, right? So if we look at a quick little example, because I get this all the time, wait a minute, how do I decide frequency and damage? Where's the relation? How do I figure out where I want to apply those? So we'll use this example of a application, a banking application, all right? So we look at the high frequency and the high damage. If I can't view my account, I'm going to have a lot of upset customers, right? They use it all the time. Everybody wants to see their account. And if they can't see it, that's a problem. Okay, same thing with paying my bills. If I can't pay my bills through the application, what's the point, right? Same thing with transferring funds. Okay, now let's look at low frequency and medium damage. Looking up an ATM. Okay, why would that be medium damage? Well, they look up an ATM, they don't use it all that often, and we accidentally send them to a different bank. Ooh, that's not good. Okay, changing an address. People don't change their address all that often, but when they do, they really want it to work. Is that going to impact the business? Yeah, probably. Now we go down to low frequency and low damage, ATM lookup. Oh, wait a minute, you have it as low frequency and medium damage. How can it be both? Well, because in one scenario, we send them to a totally different bank. In this scenario, we send them to a location that's across the street from our ATM. Okay, so it's not so much damage, right? So this is where the business really has to go through and define the criticality behind it, okay? It's imperative that that definition comes through, and the business decides exactly what the frequency and damage is. Now, anybody ever write any code? Ever? Okay? Whenever you go in and you say, okay, what's the most important part of an application when you're talking to developers? What do they always say? It's my piece. It's what I wrote. Okay. If my name isn't on the About page, is my heart going to be broken? Yeah, probably. Does it affect the business? No, not really. So that would be, right, low frequency, low damage. But if I can't place that order, or the login page, if I can't log into the application, high frequency, high damage, okay? So once I've got my definitions around frequency and damage, and I apply that to my requirements, as we go through and we build out tests associated with those requirements, and we start executing them, we get a clear view in Tosca of our release readiness. We can see our coverage, okay? We can see our state and where we are with the execution in pass or fail. Now I can look at this from a holistic view and decide, is the risk at the right level? Have I covered enough risk to release my app? And I can see this based on those requirements. So now, as we finish up our sprint and the application's ready to go live, I can look at it and say, hey guys, we're not ready. From a risk perspective, we're not covering enough to release this into production. So this gives me a nice clear view consistently across the board. But that's not enough. We need to actually go through and optimize the number of tests that we're going to execute. And we do that in Tosca through test data sheets, okay, test case design, where now I can take my data that I would use for a test, I can apply an algorithm to it, pairwise, orthogonal, right? You guys know all these fun algorithms that you use? There's a lot of different ones. You can use all combinations, right? You can also use linear expansion, which is one of ours. And what that does is it intelligently gives me the right number of test cases based on my data to execute the right number of tests in association with my acceptable risk. So if you say, okay, 80% risk coverage is good enough, I could use linear expansion. It would give me the right data set, and I can then apply that to my test case, and I've met my risk with regards to now releasing my application. So the whole idea behind this, right, is that I'm going to, instead of test harder, I'm going to test smarter. I'm going to use risk-based testing. I'm going to maximize the number of test cases by minimizing them technically. Okay? And now I can have a very clear view of my overall risk perspective with regards to releasing the application. Does that make sense? Any questions? We went through a lot of stuff very quickly. No questions. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Obviously, hang out. Lots of good stuff at the booths. And make sure you give us feedback on the talks.